Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Tonight is the July 11th, 2013 session, work session of the East Fishkill Town Board. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Tonight, we have one announcement. We had actually, about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we were notified by the town of Beekman that the National Guard was going to build a 750,000 square foot maintenance facility in the town of Beekman. They were very thrilled at that time about this project. Unfortunately, we were not so thrilled as all the traffic to the facility next to Greenhaven Prison funnels through the town of East Fishkill on Route 52, 216, or Old Route 52. So we had contacted the National Guard, the New York State Army National Guard, and we've had some discussions with them. They had a presentation here, what was it, Ethel, about a month ago?
Yeah, I'd say about a month.
Must be about a month ago, and they set up everything, and they didn't take answers from the audience, but we were allowed to go to different tables with different topics. And the one table that we ended up at was the traffic table. We actually had our traffic engineer from Hudson Valley Engineering there, and he had prepared some concerns of ours, and we submitted them. And Deputy Supervisor Walker also submitted some comments, some questions. And just the other day, we got a response from New York State Division of Military and Naval Affairs. I guess I should be polite, just to say, the New York Division of Military and Office Affairs doesn't feel we have any issues. Basically, we asked about traffic studies. They said we've done traffic studies that we recognize need to be done. We asked about thresholds, over 100 cars a day or something, I think was the threshold that our traffic engineer brought. Well, we're not above that, but they had no criteria for why, except they know their operations. So basically the letter says, we're building it, it's going to be, construction starts in October in Beekman, and they don't feel that they have any more need to do any more studies on our behalf. As I believe you asked a couple of questions. I like the one that you asked. You brought up actually the Phillips Road and 216 intersection.
Correct.
Which anybody that lives in the town of East Fishkill, ever since I was a kid, I'd go up that turn. I call it a white knuckle turn because it's kind of like that, and then you just kind of dive in. That I think I'd like to actually, again, note in a letter. We're going to send a letter. I've contacted, actually Senator Gillibrand's office has been very understanding about our plight. So we're going to send a letter to Senator Gillibrand and ask them to contact these folks. I'm going to put that specific intersection in the letter. So we'll see if they can get their attention. We're dealing with New York State and the Division of Military and Naval Affairs, so who knows what's going to happen. But just let everybody know, we got our response. Thank you. Anyway, that's tough. We're also having a little battle right now with Cablevision. I don't know if anybody knows about that one. All right, we have a contract with Cablevision. We've had a contract with Cablevision since, I think, 1995 to supply all cable TV and all that stuff in the town of East Fishkill. They're the only vendor. As I think we all recognize, Cablevision is the monopoly in the town of East Fishkill. We're broadcasting on Cablevision equipment, and we're broadcasting on the distribution, thank you, network from Cablevision. But we've seen the changes they've made. Unfortunately, they don't do Cablevision News in Wappingers anymore. It goes down to Long Island. And our contract is up, and they've changed on their own, unilaterally, they've changed some of the conditions of the contract that we've been going over. We get a franchise payment, which was a little bit different than it has been in the past. And we asked them to come down. John of Cablevision said that they recognize revenues differently these days than they had in the past. So we asked for a copy of how the FCC defines revenue. And Tom, did you see anything in that letter in that definition?
Exactly the same as it's been for 20 years.
So we do question that. So we're having a little ongoing battle. So I don't think I'll be on Meet the Leaders probably ever again, but such is life. So as a matter of fact, before he left that night, he said, oh, by the way, if you want, we can put you on Meet the Leaders on Friday. And I said, sir, thank you very much. I pass. So Anyway, so we're going to be writing letters to the National Guard through Senator Gillibrand's office, and we're also going to be responding to Cablevision. So I just want to make everybody aware of those things.
With these changes, and we had a contract with them, since they have changed things, would our contract be null and void?
No,
And we could start?
what it is that our contract has a definition that the franchise fee is on all revenues
Correct.
derived from the system.
Right.
But the Federal Communications Commission has changed certain definitions of video programming.
Okay.
And they're trying to indicate that they're allowed to reduce what they pay us because for the internet service they provide is not included in the video programming definition. And the franchise fee is only applicable to video programming. However, our contract doesn't have that same language, so our position is, at least for the term of this contract, they should
They
pay
should honor it,
in
yeah.
accordance to their past practice of the last 8 years also.
Well, I think it's unfortunate because, a lot of the residents in East Fishkill don't have the opportunity because of whatever. Some can use FiOS, or we can either use Frontier, okay, for telephone or cable, telephone or internet. And most of us are left with one option, so.
But I think it'd be good to note that Verizon does not service East Fishkill, all of East Fishkill.
No.
Service, and Verizon is the only company that can offer FiOS.
Okay.
It's a Verizon product, and it's their equipment and infrastructure. Because
Okay.
many times,
We've tried.
when we talk about cable
Right.
on
Right.
our meetings, the supervisor will get inundated with calls about, why can't I get FiOS? FiOS can only be offered where Verizon has the service area at the
Gotcha.
present time. So,
They don't
have the
and in those
service area.
communities that do have that, there's a healthy competition. And I'm sure they're not having the same problem with Cablevision as we are.
I'm sure they're not. Healthy competition is good.
Right.
Unfortunately, Cablevision is our vendor in the town of East Fishkill. Anyway, that being said, just wanted to get those out of the way. There's no presentation this evening. I do have 2 items on the agenda that I would like to discuss. And the first one is a rezone petition for the East Fishkill Golf Center, which was a project that has come forward approximately 2 years ago. A firm came forward, they wanted to do a sports dome. The East Fishkill Golf Center's been on the market for probably 3, 4, 5 years. Every couple of years, they'll come in and they'll say, well, we have a project that's interested. And I think we've seen, commercial, residential mixtures, large strip malls. One was a large apartment complex, I think it was 225 units. And, but they came back at one point and they said, that we have this company that's interested in doing a sports dome. And that really kind of piqued our interest because, number one, town of East Fishkill has a lot of sports people in it, I being not one of them. But we do have a lot of sports activities in the town. And the other one, too, as I see it, a sports dome would be an economic driver. It would draw people from all over the county, the state, where have you, to these things. And I've spoken with people in sports, and they agree that people travel to come to sports domes. So we did, they were in discussion for quite a while, then their talks fell apart. And I kept in touch with the gentleman, Asadi, American Air Supported Structures, American Air Supported Structures, and they do a lot of these. They patented this system. And I stayed in touch with the gentleman even when their talks fell apart over there. And I kept trying to find a place for him to have a home here in the town of East Fishkill, because in my mind, what a great economic generator. Then their talks came back on track after quite a few months. And they came to an agreement, and then they came back to see us, and they submitted a plan. And I'm a tad conflicted right now because I'm not happy with the plan. But Tom, would you talk a little bit about what the rezone petition is?
Right. Unlike a normal development project that would usually start out with the planning board, this project would require the town board to consider amending the zoning ordinance in certain ways. The 2 prime things would be the height of the structure, because the dome at its peak would be 150 feet, and our ordinance doesn't allow for structures that tall. And the other is for lot coverage. When you take the size of the piece of property that they have, minus the federal floodplains and wetlands on it, they're going to a very high coverage of the lot between the facility. The dome itself would cover 7 acres. It's 4 baseball fields and 4 or 5 multi-purpose fields on the inside, plus stand and retail. So when you do all of that, that would exceed all the current limits in our zoning ordinance. So the town board would have to amend the zoning ordinance, and then it would have to go to the planning board for the normal array of approvals, the floodplains, wetlands, site plan, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. And, yeah, the two things that really do stand out is the height of the dome is 150 foot tall, as Tom said, and a 7-acre coverage. This is a huge facility. I mean, they tell me that actually if they clean the whole thing out, the New York Yankees could come up and play a game in here. They built these things, they built all over the world. They built for, I don't know, was it Seahawks or somebody in Florida, Scott, you recall?
Miami Dolphins.
Miami Dolphins. I knew it was some team in Florida.
And Rutgers
At least
University.
Training
Rutgers,
facilities, right?
Yeah.
Seahawks are on West Coast.
What's that?
Seattle.
Seahawks are on West Coast.
Oh. Well, what do you expect?
Just down the road.
But anyway, I mean, they do a very professional job. This is what they do. In my opinion, they want to do one of their own for themselves. So I'm thrilled they came to the town of East Fishkill, but I'm conflicted because when I saw the plan, I have some serious concerns with it. They met, Asadi met with our professionals about 3 weeks ago and went over many aspects of the plan. And they use up every conceivable square inch pretty much of the property. It's a little concerning to me that there's really no access to the rear section, to this rear corner, or to part of this section. There's not enough, like 20-foot access through there. And the fire commissioners have written a letter saying that you can't get equipment back there. Our large fire trucks cannot make the turn in the back on those 90-degree turns, corners. So there's a lot of concern here. I love the concept of the dome, but I'm just very concerned, number one, with the site. They don't have near enough parking as we can recognize here. And Route 52 is a little bit of concern too, up in that area where you have the Taconic Parkway, and especially on a Sunday or a Saturday when you had the flea market. So I love the concept of the dome and what it can do. I'm not thrilled with the site myself. It's a narrow, long site, and I think it creates some logistic issues. So we have several reports from our professionals, and we do need to know if we're going to move forward with this rezone application. So does anybody have any questions, any thoughts? I mean, I really am conflicted because I was thrilled that they were coming. I was thrilled that they finally put together a deal, but when I saw it, I called up the gentleman from the company and I said, this isn't working. And he says, no, this is what it has to be for our economic model to make this project work. So.
Did anybody go to the Danbury site?
No, they just finished that one a month ago. Did you ever go, Bill? I know we had discussed going up
Yeah,
there.
They were
I-
supposed to let us know when it was finished.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because, you know, my understanding is that the facility was really the dome, but now they're building all these baseball fields and outbuildings or whatever you want to call them, and that's not what I had visualized. I'd be interested in knowing or seeing, and I have no problem if I could get the directions of going to Danbury and seeing if they are filling that piece parcel like they're filling this parcel.
The one in Danbury, I understand, is quite a bit smaller than the
Oh,
one
is
you're
it?
proposing there, but
Okay.
still, it's a large facility.
Yeah. They've got the outdoor fields on this one. They have one small soccer field, and they have two baseball fields, plus several fields inside the building. Yeah, I'm really just kind of troubled by this. You can see by this line, actually this back corner of the building, it looks like it's in a floodplain. And if you look on the parking, I know that one of the notes on the parking said that.
It's half the parking, when we had one a few years ago, it's half the parking that the smaller dome had.
Right,
Which
right.
is very concerning.
Yeah. And they put, actually, part of the parking, good road
Right.
parking, I think, is in a right-of-way. So,
I think we've all been very enthusiastic about the concept, but then when we start seeing the specifics of the various professionals, you can see there's some glaring concerns. I'd like to ask Scott, and I talked to Scott about the stormwater in his office a couple of months ago, but you have now stormwater treatment remains a concern. Could you explain more?
Well, it's a little bit on the complicated side. There's a lot of factors that go into the stormwater. I'll give you some of the highlights. First of all, the pond is in that floodplain area. So the volumes that they're assuming for storage, we question if they're realistic or not, because with the 100-year flood, you're going to lose a lot of that volume. And they're actually starting their bottom of their pond below that elevation by 1 or 2 feet. So there's got to be an adjustment made for that. In addition, they didn't really come up with a map that showed the pre and post conditions to show the actual water shedding off the property. So we're waiting to get that map to really analyze the pre and post. So right now we're kind of just based on the numbers that they're giving us, but we really don't have the map to quantify it. There are certain factors that you're supposed to use when determining the amount of runoff you have from a site, time of concentration, runoff paths, and there's a lot of those details that are just not really up to snuff just yet. So until you take care of all the variables, you really don't know what the final answer is going to be. So what they're representing right now, in theory, could work, but until you change or revise all the numbers, you really don't know the final answer.
But our code tells you how close you can build to a property line. And they tell you how many parking spaces you have to have per square foot of the building, somewhat, don't they?
We don't really have a code for this particular type of structure.
Well,
That's why we would have to amend the code, because they're proposing the height, the size, there's many
I mean,
variables in it.
the
But
height, in my opinion, we started
distance-
to talk about it, what was
But
it,
now
10
with
years,
this
20
plan, they're
years ago, Ethel?
seeking, now with this plan, they're seeking different setbacks, things like that. The parking is not set forth in our ordinance because this type of use isn't allowed. And the planner, I think in her memo, if you look around at other places, you can get all kinds of variations on it, but it seems to be that even when our planning board considered it back in the 90s, there was double the amount of parking that's proposed here in a dome that was half, I think less than half the size. And the planning board then had doubts about it being sufficient. And the other thing that was pointed out is they haven't made any allowance here if a team comes in by bus. There's no way for the bus to come in, turn around on site, and also park. So and there isn't any extra room on the site to create any of this area. That's what the
Yeah, but I mean, if we
promises.
don't change all those laws and wipe out every law that's in effect, which I am not for,
Then they can't build it.
then they can't build that
Correct.
piece.
Correct.
But it's, as I understand, it's not necessarily wiping out those laws, it's creating an amendment to the zone to provide.
For this
Yeah,
type of
really.
facility.
Yeah, but you can't build within 20 feet, and what's our setback on the Taconic? We have a setback on the Taconic?
1,000 feet. They're way beyond that.
Oh,
That's
they're
why
way
you have to
beyond that.
amend the zoning.
What is the zoning on this time, a B1?
There's a B1.
Is it B1?
And in fact, when the golf center was built, the town board amended the law then to allow major outdoor recreation facilities, so that's how they qualify.
Right.
I just want to say, I know there's huge challenges to overcome reading all the statements from the fire advisory board and the engineers, but this is such a huge economic driver. I know about their dome in Toms River, I've seen it, and the economic implications down there is extraordinary. It really is. They're constantly full year-round. I mean, it's too bad this is, the site's not larger for this.
Yeah.
We could really use this in our town.
And I gotta agree with you, Dick, I gotta agree. This is why I was always so thrilled with this project, because, wow, this is like fantastic. But but then getting back to the site constraints, if you were packed all year round, you have all those parking spaces would be packed. Yeah, logistically, it's a nightmare. And I couldn't agree with you more. It's a fantastic economic driver.
Michelle Robbins in her memorandum mentions New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. they could have some say in this about the proximity to the Taconic as far
Right.
as
And view shed.
being visibly acceptable?
Correct. Any application like this, be if it can be viewed from the Taconic or any other state area, you have to refer it to them, and then they weigh in on their opinion with respect to whether or not it, and the Taconic is a historic highway, so
And
that
I
they,
believe the Appalachian Trail.
Yes, you mentioned that as well.
So if we say, we said, okay, we like the project, they could override our decision.
Yeah.
it's,
don't think they
well,
can
there's a
override
lot of
it.
ramifications for it. It gets into the secret process, which is the environmental review.
And
And
they'd
those
have to do
comments, they
mitigation.
have to try to mitigate it, and one mitigation would be a smaller dome. And you could get yourself into a position where the state would challenge the approval, that enough mitigation wasn't put in place.
So the developer has to make concessions and maybe economically it won't be viable, okay.
Or they could ignore it, just like the National Guard is ignoring us.
Oh, there you go.
But they're not the DOD.
Right, whatever.
I'm telling Bill, I want to fight the DOD, and he keeps saying, I don't think we're going to win this one. Weight limits. Oh, sorry, I was a
Different subject.
different subject. Yeah, but again, looking at the site, one of my biggest concerns, again, is when you go to this back section, and there's really no access for emergency vehicles. Heaven forbid anything was to happen, you couldn't get back there. You couldn't get back there, I don't believe, with a fire truck or anything, and, yeah.
I think one concern, it doesn't really jump at you, but, you know, during the winter, when we have snow events, there's a tremendous amount of snow that's going to shed off this structure. Fortunately, it sheds off and it's not supposed to sit on top, as that
Right,
with other
right.
cars. But still, you have a huge volume of snow around the perimeter of the structure, you have a 20-foot wide access road. So in my mind, we covered with snow, X feet deep. And even if we could maneuver vehicles around, which currently you can't, unless that snow is completely removed.
There's no
in my
access.
mind, renders it without access. So, you know, I think we have to be very cautious about, you know, in an emergency situation, not that there should be some kind of failure due to heavy snow or something like that, ice and what have you, that either the hours would have to be limited until all that snow can be removed around the perimeter. It's just, because they're not giving themselves any additional room, they're using
Right.
the access road as that snow shed.
That's a snow shed, yeah.
And I'd also point out, we've mentioned to them early on that we asked them to look at acquiring any other property around it to maybe lessen these kinds of things. And I guess because of the wetlands and the ownership and everything, they're unable to do that. So, you know, it's kind of wedged onto that site.
But I think there's a note from the fire commissioners that, isn't it encroaching at some point
Yeah.
on their property?
They take
Where is
some,
it?
with some grading.
Yeah.
Grading and erosion control.
And there is an issue where the parking is shown is, originally when that subdivision was approved by the planning board, the lot next to the fire district offices that's vacant now, that the fire district now owns, and the golf center were to share this access out to 52. They did not envision any other road. What's shown on here, while the parking spaces are not totally in that right-of-way, which is still legally there,
70 spaces.
about 70 spaces, they would impact and interfere with the property owner, the fire district's rights of ingress and egress here. So,
Isn't that all something that would have to be hashed out in the planning and the
well,
planning
but
stage?
that's illegal. I mean, that, if the fire district didn't want to give up their rights of ingress
Then
and
they
egress
can't-
over
then they
that
can't use
issue, no one can force you to do that. That's a private property right.
I mean, I'm for the concept of the project, but the way it's there, if they're not willing to amend it, then I think they're gonna be out of luck.
I mean, the way it is there, you could shift from here to there. That's
I
it. It
mean,
just
you
fits.
gotta have the parking, you gotta still come off.
Well, I
Because
mean,
if we
they could
start letting
generate
these
more
people.
parking if they took, they're proposing 2 full-size baseball fields out in the front by 52. I mean, that area could be utilized for
Maybe make
parking,
one, yeah.
but it wouldn't address the
Right.
20-foot issue
Well,
with the road.
the
on the
20-foot
side.
issue is another issue that's gonna have to be handled. I mean, because you gotta have a snow plan, and like Scott said, if not, we're gonna just shut down until it melts?
Well, they can remove it, but it's gonna be time consuming.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
it's gonna
And you're
cost,
gonna have to-
it's
and you
gonna cost
can't-
them a lot of money
Yeah.
too,
Yeah,
to haul it all out.
yeah, you have to haul it out, there's no way to push it back.
But you really can't blow it onto the neighbor's property.
No.
I don't think so. You gotta get it out of there.
What did they
Yeah,
have
he does.
for, they didn't have sewer,
Blow
we
it on
never
your neighbor's
did nail down what they were gonna use, I mean,
They're showing like a future lift station, period.
That's,
Nothing beyond that, as far as potentially someday hooking up to the sewer.
And in fact, they're proposing to actually open with porta johns until the, so that they can open while the sewer is worked out.
yeah.
What about the proposal for the current dome for our use? Now, did they expand upon that at all, saying that?
It's still
Is
there.
it, yeah, is it restricted? Did they go into that at all? I mean, how could we have an event while they're having an event? I mean, is it
Well,
part?
I do think that Michelle Robbins, our planner from AKRF, she did mention that they were including the parking that's required for activities going on there now, which would be
Right.
that dome,
Oh,
including that within
including
the
that. Oh,
overall.
okay.
So she accepted that, or maybe that was Hudson Valley Engineering. Hudson Valley Engineering, and
Oh,
they
I-
accepted that within the total traffic calculation.
Oh, I thought they added that, they took that parking in addition
Did
to.
they, Scott? You
Well, I think
recall?
that's in terms of their traffic impact study, but not in terms of actual on-site parking.
Okay.
Yeah, That's about, I get actually kind of two reviews, one for
Yeah.
on-site,
Yeah.
one just for off-site.
How many spots are there roughly total? Remember?
I think
277,
is what they're
yeah.
proposing right now. And the one that was half the size had 350 plus 36 bus spaces, plus I think it was 36 bank spaces. So, and there was a question whether that was enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. if-
Now, these people, to their defense, have suggested that they'll schedule busings from some off-site parking lot.
Where they,
That's as far as that
Yeah.
went.
Where's,
where they gonna buy that building, property?
Have they shown any, or you've talked to them more than I have they shown any interest in, or would they be receptive to a downsized? This is it.
well, when I got this, and we looked at it, about a week after I got it, I called up the gentleman from Masadi. And I said, I love the project, but this blows my mind, you know, and he said, no, economically, he said, we run the models, we need everything we've got.
That goes into the business plan to finance it and everything.
Yeah.
The banks aren't interested unless you can,
I mean, the size of this, the amount of people that will come, I mean, 52, they'll be building hotels and,
Yeah,
yeah.
yep, that's
Well,
kind of
what
our
about
hope.
the West Complex?
Yeah. And and again, going back to when their negotiations fell
Right.
apart, I talked to a gentleman from Masadi, we looked at every parcel.
Right.
I think we looked at, if the airport, Strongbel Airport ever came up for
Right.
sale, we looked at that. We mentioned the West Complex, we mentioned Lime Kiln, which would have taken over all of Lime Kiln.
Mhm.
but We couldn't do that because that's a town recreation property. Looks across the street, too much floodplain, so, but there are a couple options out there that, they would just continue to keep looking. I told them, I'd like to have them in East Fishkill. I think this board supports the dome project. It's just in the right spot. You know,
So I think the way to phrase it would be the fact that they filed a petition to amend the zoning. And I guess the town board, what I'm gathering is you feel the minimum acreage that this type of facility would be allowed on if we amended zoning should be bigger,
Right,
bigger site, or at least have more usable net area.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, more usable
That's the
area.
problem here. And they still using the one road going in. And then, Scott, I think we had talked about this early on, that they really should have another road coming out for better traffic circulation in sight.
Yeah,
but they-
somewhere else,
Yeah.
another exit road, yeah.
Yeah, but this
Yeah,
is-
Scott, you put that in your memo. There's no emergency road.
Well, as far as emergency access, it really doesn't go around the complete perimeter of the structure. I mean, you have that one road in and out. The aisle itself, the parking is like 800 feet long without any gaps in it. So as people come in, if they're waiting for people to find a parking space, I mean, we haven't even gotten into whether or not it could queue out to 52 yet. So that's, down the road if it gets that far.
I mean, doesn't just the wetlands and stuff, isn't that gonna prohibit some of this building?
Well, we can issue floodplain development, we could issue a buffer disturbance permit, I mean, we have the power to do that, but a
of that, they have to find out that from a stormwater standpoint, can they store the volume that they're representing they're going to store? Their engineer has stated that they think there might be an error in the FEMA maps, but we haven't had seen anything yet to, support that. They'd have to do a letter of map plan revision to try to amend those FEMA maps.
So what they're proposing is, as a late non-engineer, it sounds to me like what they're trying to do is build the storage for the stormwater in the floodplain. And the floodplain would be flooded when the stormwater is coming down. So it's probably an engineering feat to.
Well, they're arguing they have a berm high enough to keep that water from coming in, but what we're not certain is what may percolate from the bottom. So I mean, there is a question there.
Would that impact surrounding?
Well, there is the wet
Residences.
area right to the rear. I don't know that it would necessarily impact surrounding residences. I mean, that's kind of not too heavily populated. I mean, you do go back to like Townsend Road.
Right,
on
there's
the
about
backside.
100 acre wetland
Right, I
behind.
understand.
Yeah, so whether or not, we haven't got to see how it might impact areas along Townsend.
What's concerning too is the Board of Fire Commissioners made the point that they can't set up their ladder truck. There's inadequate room for that. And that's a fairly important thing with a dome structure 150 feet.
If I'm not mistaken, I think they need 18 feet just for the outriggers. And then you want to have an emergency vehicle be able to get past that vehicle. So you're talking at 30 feet minimum.
Yeah.
And then it has to be some kind of offset off the building.
Yeah,
The angle
for
of the
the
ladder,
angle,
right.
for the boom.
But the fact that they're having restaurants in there puts it into a different category in terms of emergency response.
Well, that's a good point. The restaurants are gonna have up on an elevated mezzanine,
Right.
yeah, which is kind of concerning then if you can't get equipment in to access the mezzanine area. And I see the fire commissioners recommended sprinklers.
Oh, you got those sprinklers, but minimum. That's minimum.
Well, like I say, I'm conflicted. I was thrilled with the project. I was really thrilled that they came to an agreement, but when I opened the plans, it just didn't look good.
I mean, did they get copies of any of the responses that we've got?
It's ongoing right now, as of like end of last week, beginning of this week, we've been going back and forth. with
So have they
comments.
responded to any of the questions that we got?
Not yet.
Some of these things, it's, I don't know, it's
They've actually-
baffling.
I'm sorry, they've actually asked us for a follow-up meeting to try to set that up, but we've
Okay.
been kind of waiting.
So there's still communication?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's key. I mean, if we just get our responses, I mean, I think we should wait to hear from them. I mean, I love the idea. Are they gonna build on that exact plan? I don't think so. That's my opinion. Looking at it quick, you gotta be able to get around, you gotta.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well,
Safety, the whole thing.
That's why certain challenges, it doesn't make sense to me. They built these, they run them, they know what they're doing. So, like what you said about the snow load coming down off of this thing, and there's only a 20-foot wide road there. Don't they take that into consideration? Do they know? Have they done this in the past? I mean, the one in Tom's River, they have a lot of snow too, but it's probably not as large as this.
No, we've discussed the snow, and they don't think it's an issue, but we do.
I mean, it's only 20 feet wide around that, though. Yeah.
You do the math, you get 10 inches of snow, which we get a couple times a year. How long is this thing going to be shut down while they're removing the snow?
Yeah,
What
if there's
happens
a
when you
big
have people in
event,
here
yeah.
And it starts to snow while you have people in here, so it gets into those, whereas if you had a cushion, if you just had 20 feet around the whole building, and then you had your access, it's a different story.
How would this work with our mass assemblies law?
Well, we talked about that with them because of the fact that obviously this would be a venue for very large indoor events. So in that case, they would have to apply to the town board for a permit under the public assembly law. And for those times that they would do that, they would probably have to rent parking spaces, say from IBM or the school, which lot, and bus the people
Bus
to
them in.
here, as opposed to having all on-site parking. So that's what other communities do with a big event like that, so that they would be amenable to that, but they would have to come in and prove to the town board's satisfaction that they had made the proper arrangements.
And that could be very often because only 1,000 people.
Oh, yeah.
This,
Oh, yeah.
The
Well,
amount-
that would only be if they're gonna have, if it's for regular activities that are authorized here, they don't need that permit, but it would be if they were gonna have. 'Cause they do
Concert
say
or
their
something.
venues are used for concerts and things like that, and they could envision a few times a year doing it.
For
Okay.
1,000 people, I mean, we don't have parking for 1,000 people, correct?
Right. So they would have to arrange to,
Bus
make
and
an
then-
arrangement.
Even at 1,000 people, it's questionable.
Yeah.
No, I hate to say it, I just have some issues with this project. Not the concept, but logistics.
I would agree with what Tom had said before, that the project itself and what's all included, okay, is something that I think we look forward to seeing, but not on that parcel. It needs more than 23 or
I think that-
26 acres.
I think that that's the biggest
Right.
issue here. is
Well,
that-
it sounds like a large parcel, 23 acres.
Right, but,
But a good part of it is wetlands and floodplains, so
Yeah.
the buildable area is much less, and I think that's what they're
Exactly.
struggling
Right,
with.
right. And if you had parking,
And
yeah.
and the size of it's elongated as opposed to the width.
Okay. Anything else?
I'd just like to, see, you're gonna meet with them again, aren't you? Or-
Well, I've just asked the board, I mean, I don't want to see them spend a lot of money. I have no problem sitting down informally, but I'd like to ask the board tonight if we want to continue with the rezone application at this point.
If they could amend it somehow where it would be substantially different, I mean, to take into consideration all our professionals'
You can take any
opinions.
questions, That's what I'd say. I mean, I'd say it's worth waiting to hear back from them, because they can.
But the only amendment that would be significant is a downside.
Well, that's what I mean.
And
Yeah,
ju-
we've already discussed that, and that was
Yeah.
not an option.
no, I agree with you, but
Economically,
that's
they,
the
it's,
only-
it's not viable for them. Well, it's hard to, it could turn into a disaster.
But that's my concern.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about this with other projects kind of recently, and, once you approve it, you got it forever.
Yeah, like you said, if that whole 26 acres was usable,
right.
then wonderful.
Be a different story if you
Well, I
had
think
the
we need a
park.
whole different geometry, they need a little more width, they need another 50 to 75 foot of width is what they're short right now. That's really the key thing, to give them that.
Elbow room.
Mhm. So, I mean, right now, at this point, I do not want to move ahead with the rezone application. I don't want to just keep wasting their time.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I would just say, right now, it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
If you wanna sit down and look at the comments you got
You know,
from our professionals and from us,
or if there's any other
And then if
alternate
there's-
sites or whatever, but
Yeah.
I have a real problem with this, and just go forward and wasting their money. That's not a good thing. Also, I will tell you, I had a discussion with the gentleman from Asadi, and they're backers, they have a timeline. If this thing was to get caught up, SECRA and the planning board, for any extended period, I think that would be the end of it anyway.
Oh.
They need to be able to move on this, and unfortunately, I just have too many questions here. I see too many challenges. So what's the board's pleasure? I'd like to tell them that we're not going to move forward on the rezone application. And I will contact Asadi and say, we still are conceptually, we still think it's a great project, but at this point, we're not moving forward with the rezone.
I guess that's fair for the applicant.
Yeah, that's, like I said, I don't want to keep them, trying to work out details that I think are pretty significant.
No, I agree with that.
But again, I got to tell you, I think the concept is just awesome. So, I don't want to discourage them, but I just wanted to let them know that this site has significant issues, and this is what it is. So if you guys are okay with that, I'll
yeah, I mean, they may still come back with another offer.
you never know.
Might be like the wish list from the highway department.
You
5
know.
backhoes and 3 of this, and 2 of that.
Or if
Then
they
when we get
try-
through with their budget, he says, okay, I'm happy with my wheelbarrow and shovel.
Or if they try to acquire more land there, or
There's something like
Yeah.
that, absolutely.
maybe we'll tell them we'd definitely love to work with them.
So if you don't mind, I'll write them a letter, and next week and just let them know that the rezone application at this point is not happening. And again, we think the concept is fantastic, and I gotta tell you, Asadi's been great, but the site is, there's a lot of constraints. Okay, Bill?
Yes?
Ethel? Okay with that, Peter?
Yeah.
And again, this breaks my heart, because when they came in 2 years ago, it is still exciting, and we might be able to get through
Right,
this.
and I think what we have to realize is when they came in 2 years ago is a lot different concept than what it actually
And they didn't have
turned.
to deal with the property owner.
Correct.
whatever, So it hasn't been our,
No,
we haven't delayed them in any way. They
Okay.
filed this petition
All right.
about 60 days ago.
Yeah.
And actually, then we had to wait a substantial period of time for them to come in with these plans, which we've only got about 4 or 5 weeks ago.
All right, let's see what we can do. It's, again, a great concept. Let's see what we can do. Number two, I did want to discuss alternate engineering services. We had a project that was going to come before us that actually our contract engineers, Morse Associates, said that there was a conflict, although that project did not come to fruition. It still makes sense to have other engineering firms on board in case of a conflict. So we sent out RFPs. And
Actually advertised, yes. We advertised.
Oh, we advertised. We didn't send out RFPs, we just advertised in the
advertised.
journals.
Yeah.
We seem to get quite a few responses. I have one of my famous town engineers memos. From time to time, conflict arises. And while smaller projects can be reviewed in-house, larger projects require more time and resources than we are currently able to provide. We solicited proposals from engineering consultants to provide each such services when the need arises. 4 respondents are as follows: Barton LaJudice, Clark Patterson Lee, Hudson Land Design, and Rennie Engineering. Proposals from each firm are provided to all board members for consideration. Interviews with preferred firms can be arranged at the board's request. Everybody in your mailbox has a copy of the respondents' information. And if you just take a chance to review it next couple of weeks. Scott, I think we should set up interviews with the firms. You want to vet them first? You've looked at all these firms, I think.
Yeah, well, I think the first two are definitely larger firms with definite municipal experience. I think the second two are kind of smaller firms. The small, like we're doing, some 3-lot subdivision right now that there's a conflict on, the smaller projects we can handle in-house right now.
Okay.
So, I mean, my recommendation would be to look at the larger firms.
The larger
with
firms.
the heavier municipal experience that can, like a dome project or.
Right, that can handle a large
or a big
project.
housing project
Yeah.
or something of that nature if Morris's conflict.
And just so everybody knows, actually, Rich Rennie, Rennie Engineering is one of our engineers. He's handling the joint landfill with us in Fishkill. And Rich is doing a really very good job with that. He's picked up, Morris had that for a long, long time, and Rich has come in and doing a great job. So and Rich is a good person, but like Scott says, small firm, out on his own, a couple of.
Yeah, I mean, if it was a smaller project that for some reason we couldn't do, I would have no problem with his firm or maybe the other firm doing something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. But I think we want to be
Yes.
prepared on a big project if there's a conflict, that
Okay.
bigger firm.
Okay. And Barton LaJudice and Clark Patterson Lee are the 2 firms that you think have
Yes.
the size to handle something that.
Well, you have the various disciplines, on
Yeah.
these different projects, the water, the sewer, all the different things, structural aspects.
Okay.
Do you know if any of these firms, their principals ever come on to these projects, or?
No, they're both going to, well, when you say conflict-wise or? in
No,
terms of-
like the principal of the firm, do they work with you on certain projects? Or do
They'll
they
have a
farm it out
manager.
to junior
They'll have a-
engineers?
No, they'll have a PE who's the
Yeah.
manager.
Like we just went through?
Yeah,
No, they'll have a PE who's the manager, he's not necessarily a principal. I mean, these firms have literally, gotta have 100 employees, they're big firms. But they have local, like regional
Right.
things, so even though they may reach across the state, they have like a Newburgh office, let's say.
Okay, I understand.
There's 20 people in that Newburgh office. Now, if you have a specialty project, because we have these discussions, assisted living or the dome or things like that, they have resources across the state that maybe they have some staff that's worked on a particular
Right.
project.
Structural engineers that have done that
That
sort
they
of
can
thing.
bring in, their expertise. That's what you get with the large firm that you wouldn't get necessarily with a smaller firm, so. So I believe you do get the personal service from the local, regional
Yeah.
office, but you have those resources if you need them on larger scale projects.
got it.
So if we're to bring on a firm to be on board, just in case there's another conflict, I guess we should interview the top two, Martin Ledger Deese and Clark Patterson Lee. And maybe we set something up with a couple town board members for.
At the board's convenience, yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't see actually bringing another firm on until probably September.
Well, right now, we're fine, so it'd be
Yeah.
good to get ahead of it in case it should come up again.
Yeah, mid-July though, we'll have a voting meeting the end of July. I'm actually under pressure not to have a August workshop, because somebody keeps mentioning it's summer, you know, and we're supposed to lighten up a little around here. So I believe we
said
will.
that?
What day is that?
I
Who
don't know.
said that?
I'm not gonna say.
What day is that?
What's that?
What day is the first meeting in August?
August 8th.
I don't think I'm here.
There you go.
That's okay.
We're going our August workshop.
There's 2/5 of the quorum. I'm helping, Bill.
So, but the way things are going, I would look to setting up some interviews and stuff, probably, I would say sometime in August or.
How about the September
Yeah,
workshop?
September. Yeah, that'd be fine. That'd be good.
Because what happened is there were two applications that came in where there was a conflict. One withdrew and didn't go forward, and Scott's handling the other one in-house. But it just points out the fact that it would be good to have,
Another firm on
you know,
board.
someone that you're comfortable with and approve so that there wouldn't be any undue delay in churning over some of these.
I'd like to sit on in those interviews if you don't mind.
Sure.
And this is not anything new. I mean, we used outside engineers before.
Yeah, we used,
Lincoln Tully, I
Lincoln
think.
Tully, I think was one, right?
Yeah, we've had that for conflicts,
Right.
but there's been delay in arranging that
Right.
because all of a sudden you have the conflict and we have to come together. So-
Okay.
And Lincoln Tully actually has been the engineer on several projects now here in the town, so that would exclude them because these firms would agree not to have any
Right.
projects in East Fishkill, so if they did, they would lose their status as the
Gotcha.
same.
Okay. Just one last thing I did want to ask. Scott, how's our wildflower sewer project coming along?
Well, we're moving along.
Are we ready to flush?
We've got through our test, we've got the pumps operating at the flow rates that they should be
Good.
after some
We
adjustments.
changed the impellers,
We changed the impeller size.
and we didn't
got
pay
the-
for them.
Correct,
Good.
correct. And now it's just a matter of getting all the information over to the Board of Health. They haven't come to actually witness any of these tests, even though we've invited them. So we're
Okay.
getting our as-built, our test results for Board of Health. So we're getting close. I mean,
But
we're very
physically,
close.
the work is done, the pumps are pumping, and that
Yes.
was, that.
We have a couple of little adjustments that we want to make,
Yeah.
but they will run as is.
Okay.
So that's not going to.
And just to clarify that, the engineering firm that we hired actually sized the wrong impellers for the project,
Yes.
and we found that we couldn't develop enough GPM, gallons per
Well, I
minute.
think the missing part of the equation is that you get air in the line
venting.
when you start up.
Yeah.
And those impellers weren't strong enough to force the air out of the line. Once the air is out of the line, they function okay, but you needed that extra oomph.
To get the air out of
And
the
that
line.
oomph didn't go into any of their calculations.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they changed-
fortunately, the larger impellers,
And they
fortunately,
changed them, and it's all at their expense.
At their
yes,
expense,
we'll
yeah.
hold them at their expense,
It's
yes.
not at the people's expense, and it's not at our
That's
expense.
correct.
It's
Right.
good.
All the additional costs that were
And once the
associated with
health
that.
department approves, I'm told it's like a couple hours of changing something to make the flow go into the system.
Yeah,
Right, right.
And then their unit will be abandoned.
Yeah.
And they gain that building for their use at the.
Good.
We've already made that submittal to the DEC to decommission that
Oh,
facility.
good,
so
good,
that's
good.
already
And
been
their
submitted.
facility is still operating.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. But we're there, within a week or two right now,
Yes, good.
switching over.
That is very good. And I appreciate the work that you and our,
I'd like to thank John Metz, who
Our
put a lot of
engineering
work in,
assistant,
Bill
yeah.
McCollum with the inspection, yes.
wow, good people. And I don't know where we'd be without them. So, good, sounds good. Any discussion? Anybody want to talk about anything? Any questions for any of the staff that we have here tonight? No? Okay, I can't think of anything to add. I've already barked a little bit about National Guard, about Cablevision, so I'm done. But I tell you, things are running real well. And I appreciate the help of our professionals and the board. We have a terrific team. So with that, they're whispering down at the end of the table. Good? We're good? Okay. With that, we're going to close the workshop meeting, and the next town board meeting will be July 25th. So thank you very much. Appreciate everybody coming.